Somehow you are, it's fine.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Health Hearing Committee meeting, July 3rd at 4:30. What time is it?
It's 4:30.
4:30, thank you. Calling the meeting to order. Let's just do a roll call, voice roll call. Cindy Gaffney.
Kyle Markerson.
Julie Morosky.
Kristen McGuire.
Joe Clark.
Melissa Adamson.
Cheyenne Washoe.
Patty Noel.
Jeff Lovato.
Thank you. It looks like we do have some public comments this evening. Sarah Murray.
Yes.
Hi.
Well, that's part of addressing the board, or the presentation of appeal.
Yeah, so you can speak, you're welcome to speak now, or you can speak during that portion.
I would just do it with the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, great. Alicia Parmalee? Hi.
I didn't want, I'm sorry, I thought we all had to sign in.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, that you're here, I'm just gonna call your name. If you don't like to say anything, that's totally fine. I just wanna make sure everyone gets recognized. Thank you. James Johnson,
Yes.
would you like to say anything?
No.
Okay. Dan?
No, I'm good.
Keith?
Hi. No.
All right. Chris?
No.
All right. And Peter?
Here.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
I was surprised. So all the names on there, I'm like, they all want to speak. I'm like, So here we go. This is from our the minutes of our last meeting.
got it.
We just reviewed.
That wasn't mine.
You weren't that, no, I was. But no, that's a Juliana.
Okay. On to the approval of the minutes from the meeting of January 22nd, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. Any discussion, corrections, adjustments, changes? Like to do a roll call vote?
Yes.
I made the motion.
Kyle.
And second.
Juliana.
Juliana.
So Mr. Markson?
Yes.
Ms. Morosky?
Yes.
Ms. Gaffney?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to have an overview of the process.
Yeah, so just, this will be super brief. So everybody should have a packet. And hopefully you all received the same. So the reason we are here is because originally the staff request for a variance was requested by the library. That was denied, so then they made their appeal to me. That was also denied, and so they have the option to appeal to the Board of Health Hearing Committee. So you are going to hear from the library. They will present their case to you, and then the staff will have a response. Then there'll be a Q&A, and then you all find your finding of fact. That would be the recommendation to the full Board of Health at the July meeting.
Madam Chairperson, do you think we could do introductions so we know who's here?
Sure.
Present?
From the library?
Right.
Yes, thank you. Would you guys like to introduce yourself, or who's going to be speaking on behalf of the library committee? Thank you.
I'll be speaking. My name is Sarah Murray. I'm the Executive Director of the Algonquin Area Public Library District.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You want to say who you are?
Sure. I'm Chris Damsch. I'm with SMC Construction Services. We're the construction manager on the project, but I will not be speaking.
Okay, great. And while this is a formal hearing, we ask that you maintain, unless we ask you a question, then it's just discussion between the board. Thank you. All right, do you want to do your presentation?
Sure. I didn't know if you wanted to know who the other people were in the room, but
Oh,
it's up to you.
I'm okay with that. Thank you. I just wanted to know how to.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to call you.
Do you want me to come up here now?
You can come, if you guys want to sit on the side, you're going to get an opportunity to talk a little bit.
I already introduced myself as Sarah Murray, the director of the Algonquin Area Public Library District. And today I'm joined by the library's assistant directors, several of the library's board members, our architect, our construction management team, and our engineers. This afternoon, we are presenting our case for a variance so that we can proceed with the geothermal project at our Eastgate branch on the east side of Algonquin. First, I'll give you a little background about the library and the project. AAPLD has been serving the community for over 100 years, starting in a room above the Village Hall on Main Street in Algonquin in 1921. In 1976, we opened our own freestanding library at 115 Eastgate Drive, and this building served as the only building in Algonquin for the library service until the new main library was built on Harnish Drive in 2001. In order to continue to serve on the east side of our district, the building on Eastgate was redesigned and reopened in 2002 to be the Eastgate branch and has served in that capacity for over 20 years. As our community has grown and changed, so have we. Several years ago, we began looking at our building and systems and determined that we are in need of updates, including a new elevator, ADA compliant restrooms, a redesign of our lower level, a new roof, and a new HVAC system. With the environment, efficiency, and fiscal responsibility in mind, we explored the option of a geothermal heating and cooling system. Several public libraries in Northeast Illinois have already incorporated geothermal HVAC into their facilities, including Wilmette, Lake Villa, Indian Trails in Wheeling, and Gale Borden in Elgin. It is estimated that we will save our taxpayers approximately $50,000 each year by converting our antiquated electric system to an energy-efficient HVAC system. I trust that you've taken some time to read the information document that I shared with you in your packet about geothermal systems, so I'm not going to reiterate everything that's in there, but I would like to point out some particularly pertinent pieces of information. Geothermal systems provide clean, reliable, and renewable energy from the ground below our feet without burning or mining fossil fuels such as coal, gas, or oil. Geothermal pumps do not produce any emissions, and their use reduces both the demand on the energy grid and the building's carbon footprint. This type of system directly supports the green initiatives for environmental sustainability noted in McHenry County's current strategic plan. While geothermal systems require a significant upfront cost, which is perhaps why we are not yet seeing a lot of them in McHenry County, the library will qualify for 6-figure rebates through the Federal Inflation Reduction Act to help defray the cost of this project. Installation of geothermal is an investment of tax dollars, but is also an investment in the future of our community. Now to some of the more technical aspects of geothermal systems. Before describing the method used to install a geothermal system, I want to make sure that you all understand the distinction between a water well and a closed loop well, as the terms have been used interchangeably in some communication. When you hear the word well, you may think of the old stories with the bucket and the rope used to pull up water from the ground. In the case of this discussion, well just means a deep, narrow hole in the ground. A water well is a hole drilled into the ground to access groundwater from an aquifer. A pipe and pump are used to pull water from the ground, and a screen filters out particles. A water well is open or perforated, as the purpose of a water well is to move water within the well to access it for drinking, home uses, irrigation, and industries. This is a more advanced version of the bucket and rope concept. A closed loop well is a hole drilled into the ground that is sealed off from groundwater and an aquifer during and after the process of drilling. Typically, a steel casing is used to maintain open access in the earth while not allowing any leakage into the well from the surrounding soil and formations. After boring the well, a closed loop of heavy plastic piping is inserted to circulate food-grade propylene glycol, and then grout is used to fill the spaces between the piping and the well wall to protect the well from the intrusion of water or contaminants. I would like to introduce Keith Christian, our mechanical engineer from 2010 Engineering, to give you some details about the process of the geothermal system installation. And there are some drawings in the handout that I gave you that show that process. But Keith, if you'd like to review that.
The bores that we will be drilling are going to be 500 feet, and they will be drilled with a mud rotary type rig, which if you guys are not familiar with geothermal, there's two types. There's the air hammer, which makes a gigantic mess, large air pressure blowing the rock and the water and everything out of the ground, and it's a little bit harder to control what's happening down bore. We'll be using a mud rotary drill, which displaces the cuttings and any groundwater with a drilling slurry that's a combination of water and bentonite to maintain a cake wall. That cake wall thickens up and keeps the bore open and prevents any fluid loss or fluid transfer between aquifers. At the completion of the bore, the 2 pipes will go down to the very bottom, and a 3rd pipe will also go to the very bottom of the hole. That's called our Tremie pipe. The Tremie pipe is what's going to deliver the bentonite to the bottom of the bore, and as they pump the grout into the borehole, it will displace the water to the surface. After they've pumped for 10-15 minutes, they'll pull the Tremie pipe up about 20 feet, continue the process until the grout comes out of the top of the borehole. Once the grout comes out of the top of the borehole, we know that we have a solid column of grout in that borehole that will not allow any water transfer from the surface or from individual aquifers to contaminate any other aquifer in that bore. So the company that's doing the drilling, they're one of the top in the state. They're continuously drilling bores throughout the state. They also go to Iowa, Indiana, Michigan. They're an excellent outfit, and we've used them on about half of our 70 geothermal projects. I've witnessed their means and methods multiple times, and I will witness it again on this project to make sure that they're following the ICSPA standards and grouting from the bottom to the top.
Thank you. I understand that the McHenry County Department of Health has some concerns about potential contamination of groundwater or aquifer resulting from the installation of a geothermal system, and I assure you that protection and safety of groundwater is a shared concern. According to the documented cases of groundwater contamination or potential contamination listed on your website, none of these instances is as a result of well drilling. I would like to introduce Ben Ehring, our civil engineer from Erickson Engineering Associates, to give you some information about the precautions taken to prevent contamination.
So when we think of groundwater and how we could potentially clean it before it gets to an aquifer, we're relying on the soil to filter out all of the different particulates that are in there. That's what happens now. Right now on the site, we've got a parking lot that drains to an existing sewer that drains to a dry well that is on site. That water ponds up about 9 feet in the structure itself and goes through a narrow tube at the bottom that goes into the ground to a depth that is unknown, is backfilled with rock, a little porous rock that lets the water go down. It eventually gets to a strata where the pipe itself has holes. Water can leak out into the ground. Now this would also lead the potential to have water to leak in as well. And so often when you have a well next to like a septic field, the reason we have well standards for separations and for distances, 75 feet, 100 feet, depending on what counties you're in. Those standards exist so that you don't have the potential of having something from like a septic field leak into the well. 2 things we have here. One, we have a closed loop system where we have a bentonite wall that is a solid wall that prohibits water from exiting. And we also have we don't have potable water. We are trying to put water back into the aquifer, not taking water out. A lot of times with wells, the concern is contamination. You're pulling it out and someone's drinking it and getting sick. Here, we're still relying on the soil to clean out that soil. We're wanting the water to be cleaned by the soil. We're relying on the soil to clean the water, whether it comes from the ground seeping into the ground above grade or comes into our structure itself. So those are the things that are working right now, and realistically in the proposed situation, that is how we want it to work. We're looking to keep the structure, have the water drain from the parking lot into the ground. That's what's happening now. That's what we want to do. The issue is that I often wonder if the surveyor wouldn't have called it a dry well and just called it a French drain, if we'd even have this issue. But it's doing the same thing. We're relying on the ground to filter out all of the particulates, whether it's oils from cars or something else that lands on the ground. And we're not expecting any issues or anything really coming from having a closed loop system for the geothermal to come and migrate towards this well and get into the, or drain down through the soil into the aquifer. Yep.
Now that you're more familiar with the geothermal closed loop well installation and precautions, I want to share the specifics of our situation and why we're requesting your approval of a variance. You can see on the drawings that the library's property is relatively small. You can see our building there in white, and then the yellow shaded area is setbacks from existing structures. The gray right below the yellow is our lawn, and then the darker part is the parking lot. We're planning to install our geothermal field, which will be a series of 10 closed loop wells in a 5x2 array on the south lawn of the library between the building and the parking lot. In the parking lot, we have a dry well, which is a low-tech gravel bottom pit used for the management of rainwater and snow melt. When it rains, as Ben said, water flows into this pit and is naturally filtered by gravel and soil as it returns to the earth by gravity. The dry well, also called a drainage well, is classified as a Class 5 injection well, and this class is very broad. It also covers some additional well types, including septic systems for sanitary waste, wells for photo processing and dry cleaning waste, which are very different from handling rainwater. A dry well or drainage well is also considered a potential route, which is a term you'll hear again in a minute. The Water Well Construction Code, which is Part 920 of the Public Health Administrative Code, includes Table C, which sets minimal lateral distance, also called setback, in feet between water wells, closed loop wells, and sources of potential contamination. Table C is used as guidance by the McHenry County Department of Health when issuing permits for well installation. According to Table C, the minimal setback between a potential route, our dry well, and a closed loop well, our geothermal well, is 75 feet when both are owned by the same party. It is important to note that water wells and closed loop wells are viewed differently on Table C, which is why I specifically made the distinction earlier. Do you happen to have Table C to present or no?
Table C is in the packet.
Okay. So if you have it, if not, I have copies
Okay,
highlighted. And in case anybody needs a highlighted copy.
It's page 9.
So if you're looking at Table C, you'll note that there are a number of footnotes in the closed loop well column that do not apply to water wells. And several of these are directly related to geothermal closed loop wells when particular precautions are taken. For example, when a closed loop well uses USP food grade propylene glycol, the minimal setback between the closed loop well and a water well is reduced from 75 feet to 25 feet. We will use USP food grade propylene glycol in our closed loop wells. When closed loop wells are grouted the same day as constructed, as you heard from Keith, and the top 20 feet of the well are bored at least 3 inches greater than the diameter of the inserted piping, and the enlarged top 20 feet is grouted with bentonite chips within 24 hours of construction, the minimal setback to a lake, pond, or stream is reduced from 25 feet to 0 feet. The setback to a sanitary or combined sewer is reduced from 50 feet to 25 feet. And the setback from a storm sewer is reduced from 10 feet to 0 feet. We will grout the same day as constructed, widen the top 20 feet of the well, and fill the top 20 feet with bentonite chips within 24 hours of construction, as Keith described. Therefore, it stands to reason that implementing these precautions lowers the risk of contamination when installing a closed loop well system, which is why setbacks on Table C are reduced when these measures are taken. The Illinois Department of Public Health delegates authority of permitting for water wells and closed loop wells to local health departments when an appropriate ordinance is on file, and McHenry County does have such an ordinance on file and is granted this authority. Per statute 415 ILCS 30/6A, the IDPH also delegates authority to grant an exception to the setback if the owner of the well and potential route are the same, and if demonstration is provided by the owner that applicable protective measures will be taken to minimize the potential for contamination and that the resulting well installation can be expected to provide a continuous, safe, and sanitary water supply. I believe we have amply explained how we will follow all requirements for safety and eliminate to the greatest extent possible the chance for contamination during the installation and ongoing operation of our geothermal well system. You may be concerned about setting a precedent by authorizing a variance for us, but I suspect that you will not find many replications of this scenario: a dry well, a plan for geothermal, and a small property within McHenry County. The McHenry County Board has been a champion of environmental and sustainable initiatives for many years. You're all clearly focused on and concerned about community and environmental health, and your diligence is appreciated. As we look to the future, I believe we will see more opportunities for geothermal installations and other environmentally friendly initiatives in McHenry County and across the state. House Bill 4792, which would reduce setbacks for closed-loop wells if passed into law, was not moved forward during the last session, but will very likely be reintroduced in January, and would pave a smoother path for businesses, organizations, and local governments to install geothermal systems. The McHenry County Department of Health can be a model for balancing environmental sustainability, progressive leadership, and concern for public safety. We understand the need for rules and policy. We have them at the library too. But just like my library board has granted me the authority and responsibility to interpret and uphold our policies, so too has the IDPH granted you the authority to apply rules and grant variances. Every so often, we encounter a case that does not fit neatly into the rules box, and we need to use logic, thoughtfulness, and careful consideration to consider the facts and make the best decision that honors the rules but also recognizes the case at hand. We are asking that you make the best decision and grant the Algonquin Area Public Library District a variance to install our closed-loop geothermal system as planned.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak on your behalf? Director No.
So I will kind of do mine similarly in that I will kind of read through it just because I have it kind of outlined that way just for to move through it smoothly. I would say, to answer the question, if it were a French drain, it would be called that, we'd have the same situation. So just, we'd still be here. So I want to make it clear that the Department of Health supports the installation of closed-loop geothermal well systems, provided that they comply with applicable public health safety requirements. Closed-loop well systems, geothermal well systems, are regulated under the Illinois Water Well Construction Code. And as a certified local health department, we issue all the well permits in McHenry County. And by ordinance, we limit which professionals can, create site plans for well installation projects, because it was our intention in putting that in the ordinance that the designer would then identify and recognize potential conflicts with requirements so that the permits actually can be issued, very straightforwardly, and those could be addressed very early in the process to avoid a situation like this one. The Illinois Water Well Construction Code protects water wells and groundwater using a layered approach. So the first layer is proper construction of the well to prevent intrusion of contaminants. But the second layer is to do that in conjunction with proper location of the well via established setback distances from potential sources of contamination. And the setback distances are required because even when constructed correctly, wells actually can be conduits to the aquifer. So department staff reviewed the Algonquin Area Library application per the relevant standards. We also met with or spoke with library staff on more than one occasion with their consultants regarding the requirements and regarding modifications that can be made to the stormwater system to comply with requirements and allow the department to issue the permit. There's been a question about how many, do we only have a few closed loop systems in McHenry County? And I would estimate it really, since we've been capturing those numbers, to be approximately 35 to 50. We've issued permits for residential applications, but we've also issued permits for non-residential applications, including a very large system for a high school and a project for a local municipality. So we actually have quite a bit of experience in reviewing and issuing the permits. The Illinois Water Well Construction Code was actually updated in August of 2022. And at that time, Table C, as Ms. Murray referenced, which specifies the setback distances to water wells, including the closed-loop geothermal wells, to the potential sources of contamination, was updated, and it does allow those reduced setback distances to ponds, to footing drains, to pump house floor drains, or sewer line or storm sewer pipe when specific construction techniques are used. I would point out that when it was updated in 2022, there were no additional reductions offered for closed-loop well systems from Class 5 injection wells. And Illinois Department of Public Health has advised staff that all of the stakeholders, including the Illinois Association of Groundwater Professionals, the Geothermal Alliance of Illinois, and local health departments were at the table when the code was updated. And they also advised staff that there are no current plans to make changes to the administrative code that provides those setback distances at this time. And a bill was recently introduced to reduce all setback distances from closed-loop geothermal wells to 5 feet. And environmental agencies, including the Illinois EPA, public health agencies, including Illinois Department of Public Health, and that's a very unusual circumstance, Northern Illinois Public Health Consortium, of which we are a part, and local health departments opposed the legislation. And all of these agencies and all of these organizations recognize that appropriate setback distances are necessary for construction of closed-loop geothermal wells. And staff has been advised by Illinois Department of Public Health that the bill has been withdrawn. So stormwater dry wells, as stated, are defined by the United States Environmental Protection Agency as a Class 5 injection well. The McHenry County Stormwater Management Ordinance also clearly recognizes stormwater dry wells similar to what's on the library property as a Class 5 injection well. This is commonly known. All injection wells are considered to be potential routes of contamination as defined in the Illinois Water Well Construction Code. And that does go back all the way to around 1990 when it was put into the Illinois Water Well Construction Code and the McHenry County Public Health Ordinance. So we have treated these types of stormwater dry wells the same for well over 30 years. So Table C does specify that setback distance to a potential route, including that Class 5 injection well of 200 feet. And that 200-foot setback, as stated, can be reduced to the 75 feet when the well and the potential route are owned by the same property owner. And this is the case with the Algonquin Library site. So the required separation distance for the project would be 75 feet. Our position is that the environmental, the public health, and the groundwater professionals in Illinois have determined that the 75-foot separation distance from a potential route of contamination, such as a closed-loop geothermal well, is the appropriate reduced setback distance in conjunction with the correct construction techniques to protect the well, and to protect groundwater. Our position is also that newly constructed wells, just like newly constructed private sewage disposal systems, should meet all applicable standards. It is not commonly accepted environmental health practice to install new wells that are not compliant from the outset. And our colleagues in the Northern Illinois region are also not granting similar variances. We do consider and we issue variances for replacement wells, and in most cases, the new installation actually significantly improves the existing concerns, even when those standards can't be met 100%. The department also recognizes that the Illinois Water Well Construction Code allows for consideration of variances based on engineering techniques and geology, etc. So I think I need to answer the question, if the department were to consider variances for new construction, would this be a situation that warrants a variance? And the answer is that my recommendation to the public health administrator would remain unchanged, and I would still recommend that a variance not be granted for the following reasons. Stormwater dry wells are typically installed in sandy and gravelly soils because they function by accepting large quantities and large volumes of water and moving that through the soil. That is their purpose, that is their function. Sands and gravels are much less effective at removing constituents of concern, particularly chemicals similar to what you would find on a parking lot. So automotive fluids and any other contaminant that can be picked up on that parking lot, carried into the stormwater, will end up in that dry well. And I can tell you I was personally involved in a situation with the IEPA where road salts migrated into a stormwater dry well at a small business in a small parking lot, and that moved down gradient and contaminated multiple water wells. So the contaminants that may be present in a stormwater dry well is uncertain. So testing the dry well today, which was offered by the library, and I appreciated that, but that would not be effective in determining if there would be contaminants present in the future. Whatever ends up on that surface in the dry well is going to be a concern, and those contaminants can move very quickly. The Algonquin Area Library site is also included in the area identified by the county's Water Resources Department as part of the Sensitive Aquifer Recharge Area. They call it SARA, it's just the acronym for it. And this was identified based upon previous geological studies that indicate areas with significant amounts of underlying sands and gravels. And it's relevant because in SARA areas, the county recommends actually additional steps to protect vulnerable groundwater. And so the county's Unified Development Ordinance actually includes both requirements and exclusions based on whether or not a site is located in the SARA area. This site is. The county's Stormwater Management Ordinance also recognizes the additional potential concerns that are posed by Class 5 injection wells within the SARA area, and they impose additional requirements to protect it when stormwater dry wells are located in the SARA area. Again, this is true of the Algonquin Library site. The Class 5 injection well that is of concern, that is approximately 25 feet instead of the required 75 feet from the proposed closed-loop geothermal system, is hydrologically up gradient of that closed loop system, meaning that water flows downhill, right? So it is up gradient from the geothermal system. And wells can be conduits directly to the aquifer. That proposed variance of 25 feet is less than what would even typically be considered in a situation relating to a replacement well. And the reduced separation distance for the same owner owning the Class 5 and the closed loop is already a reduction of more than 60% of what the recommended setback distance is. It's my professional opinion that issuing the variance would not be consistent with sound environmental health practice. It would be contrary to the philosophy and recommended actions that are in place by other divisions, other departments, and other organizations that are also working to protect McHenry County groundwater.
Thank you. We'll recognize anybody from the board and the committee and staff that has any questions for the library first.
I have questions, but I think they're,
All right, let's go with it.
I have so many, but I'll start with a few. Going through this and reading through all these documents, I noted that there's a large focus on environmental care, and I want you to know that, you know, I can speak on behalf of several people here. We are very environmentally focused, very renewably focused. This is not what this is about, right? It's about whether or not you meet the requirements under the law. I was a little confused throughout this. If my understanding, I'm gonna just say some stuff so that I can paraphrase it and you can tell me if I've understood this correctly. My understanding is the wells you're proposing to put in the ground, the geothermal ones, are basically inert in that they're gonna be self-contained, they've sealed, I've read they're 500 feet, they're gonna be totally sealed in. What you're piping through there is food grade glycol, right, I get that. Then you have this separate well that's classified as a Class 5 injection well, or French drain, or whatever you want to call it. I get it. It's a place where water comes in, it's nasty water coming from a parking lot, and then I was trying to understand how these two things were going to interact with each other and where the contamination was. And it wasn't until the end when you talked about up gradient. Is it true, your concern, the primary concern, is that contaminants from this French drain, which will be not as deep, are going to come out of the parking lot, follow that drain into the water, they're close to these geothermal wells, and they're basically going to ride down the outside of them, this hole that's been punched 500 feet into the ground as a conduit, as you put it, to the geothermal, or to the aquifer.
Correct. The separation, the water well construction code is essentially in place to protect the well that it's constructed, right? Okay. So I'm saying that potential source of contamination, that's up gradient, the potential is very high for contaminants to travel in that direction, only a distance of 25 feet. We're all aware of contaminants within the county, groundwater contamination plumes that travel much, much further and can follow a conduit down into the aquifer, correct?
Thank you. I was trying to understand how they were going to contaminate each other, but that makes sense to me. I did not appreciate that earlier. That's one of mine. Thank you. I'll pass it to the next person.
You had mentioned in the very beginning that should they meet certain criteria, they would be approved. Would you mind going over the criteria that you offered or that you?
Yes. So we acknowledge that the site is small. We acknowledge that you're trying to do a good thing for the library. But they could eliminate the concerns that we have by modifying the stormwater collection system that they are utilizing. And if they were to eliminate that stormwater dry well, so therefore, I'm not clearly an engineer, I'm not suggesting how it would be done, I'm just saying, for instance, putting in a manhole that is solid in construction, and then that is then put through a conduit to another location and handled through the city's stormwater system, that then would eliminate that source of contamination and allow them to install it in its current location.
Without regard to the 75 foot.
The 75 feet would not apply because that potential source would be removed.
Could you address that, please?
That is an option that we have considered. It would be about a $50,000 cost for us to do that. I don't know how much I want to say about it. It is something that we have considered. It's something that we're trying to avoid, that the variance would allow for us to work around. I don't know that the conversion would fully eliminate the concern, but that's, I guess, up for all of you to consider and decide.
Well, I mean, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but you mentioned the return on the investment would be $50,000 a year. I think that would be washed in the first year if you invested in that, and then I would hope that if that's an opportunity to do something like that, then you'll sit down at the table with the department again and go through everything and maybe mitigate a lot of other issues as well. But that would just be one comment on my part. Is there a reason, or can you tell me why the construction is at where it's at and it can't be moved to a different area? I know that there were some ground issues or soil or sediment or rock base or something that it's not being further away.
Where the geothermal wells are located?
Right.
We just don't have space. Like, there's along the, do you want to speak to that?
Quite simply, one, there's a class 5 injection well on the north side of the site as well in the parking lot that's up there.
Can someone go up there? I apologize.
Yeah, and it's not shown.
No, so there's a drain tile around the piece that we're doing here that requires a 10-foot setback. So this is the back line of that 10-foot setback. There's a sewage coming along the back line here that requires a 25-foot setback. So the yellow outline is really areas that we can't build. These are two probably 80-year-old trees that we're trying to keep on the library site. And even if we moved the well that way, we were only 35 feet away from the dry head wells. We actually looked at moving the wells this way, like getting the dry well further away from the wells, and we just mathematically can't get them to be 75 feet away from the number of wells that we need to make the system viable.
On the north side of the property, there's another drain.
Yeah, on the there's a parking lot the same flip on the other side with no green space, and it uses dry wells in the same regard.
So there's no space where you can put geothermal on this site that is not within 75 feet of a dry well.
That's right.
So where are the dry wells on the other side?
If you pan up.
There we go.
Thank you.
Right.
Here and here, and then here and here.
Okay.
There's two.
And I can't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's the width across the,
There's two here and
from the
two
drive
here.
to the back of the property then? Just so
From
I get
here
that
to here.
perspective, yeah.
I believe it's 160 feet, but I can't see that either right now. Pretty close. I think that's close. I think it's 160 feet across.
What is this, what is the drywall classified in what's it called, table C here? There's that whole list of all those. What would that be?
Potential route.
Potential.
Got it.
He's absolutely correct.
And it's worth noting that table C, as was mentioned, is a wide variety. So we're talking about taking stormwater and classifying the runoff from stormwater the same as the runoff or things that could infiltrate into the ground from a septic system. So there's a large variety of things and potential things that are included in table C. Some of which I think are more concerning.
I'm sure they've done the math. They wouldn't be asking if they could have done a different way, they would have.
Yeah, I'm
The-
trying to see where the well is in that section 17 there, that bigger parking lot. Where
The
is?
big circle, that dark
There's two
circle.
of them, there's one here and here.
Oh, right
In the
there.
center, and there's one here and here in the center.
Okay.
So it's 1, 2, and then 3 at the bottom.
And the square footage for all of the geothermal drill site is what? Surface square?
Up
It's about 200 feet.
This direction?
200 feet.
It's 200 feet wide by 40 feet tall is the area of the geothermal field.
And then we're required to have the 75 feet beyond that.
How far along is this project?
Well, it's paused right now, waiting for us to figure out what we're gonna do with this system.
Get holes in the ground?
It's under construction,
Yes,
yes.
we are under construction. The lower level of the building has been fully demolished. We are installing a patio, so there's a big hole in the side of the building that we're gonna be putting in a patio.
Forgive me, have you dug any of the geothermal?
No.
No, not without a permit.
I will say though that the geothermal equipment has been ordered and is in storage.
Is there any grants available to you to mitigate the $50,000 impact of doing what would be required?
I don't know that there are grants available for that portion, to convert the dry wells. We can get some refunds for installing geothermal, but not for conversion.
I'm sure, but I mean, as much as I have interest in asking about it, it's beyond the scope of, I don't wanna, no, I have knowledge of it, but it's beyond the scope of this. So, trusting they have looked at it, they've got hired professionals to do it, so I'm sure they have.
Every funding opportunity that's available was used and pursued to make geothermal cost-effective
Sure.
installation. So the 50,000 above and beyond that is not included.
Getting the 40% on the direct pay,
That's,
because now it's an energy community also now. So they just released their revised, the IRS listed the entire McHenry County for an additional 10%.
okay. And we are working with the tax consultant to, maximize that tax credit.
Thank you for that.
Sure. Mr. Clark?
Aside from the dry well for the parking lot, let's say that's not there. The geothermal HVAC program, that's all okay.
Correct.
All the installation, all the equipment, everything. So really, the only issue that we're at dispute here is the distance between this dry well and where they're gonna put their closed loop well. The library building, is it in a municipality or is it in the county?
It's within municipal limits, correct? Municipal limits?
Was it originally built within a municipal boundary or was it built in the county and then annexed?
I would not know that. Do you
I
know?
believe it was built in the village.
The presence of the dry well, let's say it was fairground today and they're gonna build this building. Would they be permitted to put a dry well under a parking lot in a municipality with a stormwater system?
That's really a stormwater ordinance question, but I would tell you if they were, given the area that they're located within that SARA, that recharge area, I believe that they would have to have if they did utilize them, they would have to have a upgraded treatment train before it went into that to remove the contaminants because of the concern in the sands and gravels.
So the existence of this dry well was permitted under previous versions of a code. So by today's standards, it would be considered existing non-conforming with the code that would be present today should this construction have taken place new.
I'd say they're commonly used, right? They're still utilized in areas. There's no question about that. Our only involvement in them is that they represent that potential source of contamination and how it relates to well installations around them. And like I said, this goes back many years in terms, if a new subdivision, just for kind of different version of what you're talking about, if those were to go in and that were a subdivision we were gonna utilize wells for, we would restrict those entire areas around those wells. The stormwater dry wells might go in, but we would restrict all that area from installation of any wells, and that would be known up front. So I think the answer to what you're saying is yes, but class 5 injection wells are still commonly used.
In areas where there are storm sewer systems.
Yes, I think so, as part of that storm sewer system. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I can say, having done this for over 24 years, that I have not done one. I have done many systems that promote groundwater infiltration, none of which could be as simple as an open bottom basin. Sometimes we'll test the soil to see the permeability of the soil. I had a project in Chicago where I was right next to a sand sea, and you can pour water all day long and you just go into the sand and disappear. And so we got a reduction in what we had to do. But in McHenry County and pretty much in almost all of my other projects, I've never done an injection well, especially when there's a storm sewer available. The municipality would much rather have us most often tie directly into the storm sewers that are nearby. That is my experience. I do not speak for the engineering community. But that is my experience, and again, trying to think, I can't think of any other projects that I'm aware of in the companies that I've worked on with multiple engineers where that has been something that was done.
Would it be possible to put a barrier between the dry well and the closed loop well? Like a steel plate?
Right, so that's hard for me to visualize because when we're talking sands and gravel and movement of water and contaminants with water, you know, oftentimes it's gonna go vertically in that spot. So these are gonna be 500 feet deep. So would that be a 500-foot barrier? Do you see what I mean?
So,
it's going to enter into that.
$50,000 would be a lot.
I'm just saying, it enters into the sands and gravels and then it's going to move. That's the issue.
So what's the cleansing, what's the best? So let's say we had the ideal situation with a storm sewer. The best thing to clean that would be not sand and gravel, but do you know what I'm saying? So before.
But you're saying if it were installed in a different soil type?
Yeah.
Yes, typically they're not because the water then doesn't move the way they want it to. You know, so we even see some that are located in the county, you know, obviously outside of municipal limits where their effectiveness is reduced over time when silt enters them and things like that. So they have limitations that way too. Yes, so I'll leave it at that.
Is it correct, I'm just making sure I can put everything together based on what I've heard, that this type of dry well is less common way to handle it now, you know, modern in a way to move water out of parking lots?
Well, I don't want to speak, I mean, this is what, you know, he does. I think that, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Ben.
Okay, so I think Ben could answer that better. I mean, our involvement is going to be in unincorporated areas oftentimes, right, where there isn't going to be a storm sewer system.
Right.
But if you're asking in a municipal environment, I think that was what you were alluding to earlier.
Yeah,
I'm thinking you guys are in agreement on this. This is not as common in a
it's not common. Looking at historic imagery of the site, there's a school across the street that was built, and then the library was built. Not much else was in the area, so there is a likelihood at the time that a storm sewer was not available.
Okay.
The question I would have was, you mentioned an upgraded treatment train. You had mentioned an upgraded treatment train. Is there a way that we could treat any of the water that comes into the existing storm sewer prior to getting to that dry well, that where we could therefore say we have eliminated the contaminants that we're concerned about? Talking floatables, maybe we put in a hood with a, I can't think of the right name, but the skirt that grabs and collects any of the oils and chemicals that are commonly seen on or that are found in parking lots. Is that something then where we could say that we are doing as much as we can, talking about pre-treatment before we get to the dry well, we might have to take out that basin and put in a new one, but it's a lot better than making a connection where we treat that water before it gets to the dry well.
Well,
Kind of what I was asking, what's the best way to clean stormwater? The best way, besides adding $70 million to it, to any project.
So, and I can only respond to you in general terms, okay? Because if you were to make a proposal like that to us, we would probably consult with the hydrologist at the Environmental Protection Agency and ask them to evaluate that on our behalf, with the concerns that we would have. I would tell you just, and I'm not trying to sound skeptical, I'm just saying from a public health and environmental health perspective, when we say we want to put treatment trains in front of it, certainly we can reduce some of the constituents of concern. It's like when someone comes in and says, I want to test my water for everything. That's a lot. You know what I mean? So when we're in an environment like that, where really you have an open drain and almost virtually anything can be either dumped in there or be in there, stormwater dry wells like that are vulnerable. They just are in terms of what can happen. So I understand what you're saying. Could we address some of them? I think probably that we could. Would we address all of them? I don't think I could answer that without assistance from probably, hydrologist and treatment specialist probably.
That's fair.
Are you in agreement of Ms. Noem's assertion, Divisional Director Noem's assertion that the dry well as it is present already would be classified as a potential route for contamination under Table C?
I would have no opinion.
It's very diplomatic of you.
I thought so too.
I'm looking, my point is, I'm looking through this table of all of these options, right? And I agree that seems, I understand the concern that we're worried about contaminants going in there. It seems like that matches up well with that. And in my job, right, often seeing a lot of leaking vehicles and pavement and all sorts of just very surprising things that will come out. That's why I think it's funny when we're talking about how would you clean it out. I'd be hard pressed to find out what's actually on there.
Where I struggle is that because I feel that category of class 5 injection wells is very broad.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that even in the last statement you made, it was talking about for a collection water system, which was intended and implies to mean something potable that we're all going to drink. And I understand that. Maybe I misheard, but that was my take on it.
Are we in agreement on what a closed loop well is?
Yes, he's got a closed loop well.
Right, we're agreeing on that.
I'm not worried about that. We're worried about stuff getting outside that and following the path down. I understand her Patty's concerns there.
What I'm looking for is agreement on that second thing, what that dry well would be classified on. And if we can agree that these things were updated, this law was updated by the state in 2022, all these stakeholders were at the table, they all had an opportunity to get their notes, and people way smarter than me. We're gonna figure this out and sort out what was the best way to handle, and I agree with you. There are some things in here that are pretty straightforward, and there's some of them that are pretty vague and broad. And I agree that that one's pretty vague and broad. And unless you can tell me which one of these other ones you think that dry well would fall under, I would say it is that one.
As it is classified, it's correctly classified as a class 5 injection well.
Okay.
Is what a dry well should be classified as based on the categories that the EPA has set up.
Okay. So we're in agreement.
With that is a class 5 injection well, yes.
Okay.
The dry well is.
I have more questions, but I'll pass it to someone else.
I can just offer, Jeff Lovato, with the Environmental Division. The Illinois State Code in the definition does have a definition of a potential route.
Okay,
and I can offer that it means the abandoned or properly plugged wells of all kinds. Also drainage wells, all injection wells, including closed loop heat pump wells, and the excavation for discovery or development of stone, which is be a gravel pit. And it does would not include the closed loop wells utilizing the food grade polypropylene glycol that we're talking about today.
Does not.
Does not. That's the injection well. Yeah.
But it sounds like that is a drainage well. That is what's
correct. To your question, the dry well would be the potential.
So that is the controlling segment of Table C. That's where it says. I see where you got the data from. Okay. You want us to know? Kristen, I wanna,
No, I'm learning the drawing here, so.
you said you're building the building there also, right? Are
The
these?
building is there,
The building is there, I'm sorry.
yes.
Are these two projects or one project?
It's ideally one project.
One project. When was the contract signed? This year, last year,
I
sometime?
mean, in the last 6 months.
Yeah, last year.
Okay. When did, and you said the geothermal equipment arrived?
Yeah.
When did it arrive?
I'm sorry?
Not the equipment,
Sure.
yes, the
Equipment.
inside equipment has arrived, not the drilling equipment.
Sure.
Just to be clear on that.
Without the wells,
It's useless.
right. At what point in your process do you normally file for a permit that would have discovered that this was gonna be a problem?
The permitting is always done by the geothermal contractor.
Okay.
So once it goes through its bidding process, geothermal contractor is onboarded. They take our plans and submit it for permit. At that point is when we learned that this was an issue.
When was that? And it seems like there's a delay. If you bought the equipment, the stuff arrived, you didn't have a permit for it. I'm just wondering if that's a normal process.
So the geothermal is a subcontract to the HVAC contractor. So the HVAC contractor was brought on board, started going through their submittal processes, signed their contracts, signed their subcontractors' contracts, and then the permit was applied.
It was also a second layer of comments. The first comment was based on the sewer that ran north and south of the backyard. And then the second layer of comments that the issue came up between the dry wells and the geothermal field. So we've had multiple comments come back.
There was also the additional deed restriction.
Yeah.
So we had to pause for that as well. The county
to
required
make
us to
it one
file
lot, the
a
parking
deed
lot.
restriction, so we wouldn't sell those parcels separately.
But you were planning to do this geothermal from the outset?
Yes.
I think is your question, why did you buy the investment in capital equipment without getting the
I'm
permit approved?
just wondering, did we, Director Noam, was there some delay in our handling or anything?
No, I would say there has not been, and I'm just looking through these right now, just checking exactly what they have indicated here.
I would say typically, yes, we have the permit before we order the equipment. I think that would be the answer.
Thank you.
I also work in renewable technology, so I'm pretty sure.
Typically, yes.
And I'm asking.
Our horse and cart have gotten mixed up.
Right.
I mean, we have project schedules.
I get it. There's
We thought we were
people,
meeting.
there's people here contracted, there's people getting paid, I get it. But when I'm asking a straightforward question,
I just give you a
you
straightforward
know,
answer.
yeah, I appreciate that.
If I could answer your question,
Yes,
Kyle.
please.
So the permit application was made on February 5th. On February 15th, in the initial one that was done, the question was asked about any potential sources of contamination, primary sources of contamination within 200 feet of the proposed closed loop well, and that it's on a separate property. So those two issues that were brought forward were brought out in the very first initial review that was done by staff.
So in that first review, we noted this was done.
I thought it was a second, that's my apology.
No, it's no problem.
Yes.
No problem.
I thought
So the
first one was
75-foot
this-
change in variance was noted at that time as well.
The question about whether or not there were any of those potential sources within that 200-foot setback were asked. And then definitely on the second submittal, you're absolutely correct, the information was added and then it was identified as not meeting the standard based on its location. Yes.
That's exactly right. Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate
yeah,
that.
thanks.
And you have to pardon my ignorance, I'm one of those people that thinks electricity lurks behind the wall. And I'm always astounded at what's under our feet. So anyway, look into it.
Storm sewer drains by gravity, it's collected in.
So it just goes down whatever.
The storm
It's
sewer or the
it's-
dry well?
Well, standard storm sewers are collected by gravity. The ground drains everything to a low point where it's collected in the structure. Right now, existing on this site, it then drains from that structure a couple feet over to another basin that is, this one is 9 feet deep, and then there's an open hole at the bottom where the water can continue to percolate into the ground.
So here's your geothermal, or dry wells, or closed loop wells, and here's the storm sewer, right? So it would come down, it goes, then it drops another 9 feet.
So what you've got is you got on the surface your geothermal's here. The ground goes away from the geothermal.
Right.
I'm gonna use this, I'm an engineer, I like pictures. Geothermal field right here, everything is draining down towards this low point. This structure right here collects this area approximately. And it collects this water in here, it drains to this structure, which drops down 9 feet, where the water then goes into the injection well itself, and continues to go down into the ground at this location. These holes are proposed to be drilled at 500 feet deep.
And the water from the drain,
Yes,
it's called a
water,
drain.
yes, water from the drain.
How does it get from the drain, what's the enclosure, from the drain to the
So
9 foot deep and then out to the
there is a pipe, a solid walled pipe
Okay.
that conveys the water from one structure to the next.
And the reason for that is to get out particulate. So the pipe between the two is up higher. So it comes into the storm, the particulate drops down into the storm, and then it overflows into the dry well,
That's
so that
heavy
it doesn't get
debris.
dirty.
Heavy debris.
That's why there's two.
settle out.
Right.
Well, that's why there's two of them now.
Right.
If you did one, all the dirt would fall directly into the
Yeah.
dry well and just clog it up.
Right.
So they put one next to it to overflow into it.
It's a very rough drawing.
Well, it's,
I like it.
Cool.
But, so like, this is
You
the
took the
grass
scale.
where the, 100%. So this is the grass where the dry well, or where the geothermal wells would be sunk. This is the curb, this is our parking lot, the other curb. So the parking lot is sloped down, so there's two, they're not this way, they're the other way, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So the rainwater comes through this one, this is solid. The rainwater comes through here.
Okay.
Particulates sit at the bottom, extra water comes through this pipe and into this well, and that's where it drains into the ground.
Okay,
Does that help?
yes, thank you.
A lot.
Another astonishing fact of my life.
honorary seal, nice job.
So Juliana, I think that, similar to a septic system, I'm just gonna do an equivalent here for this. So, they're doing that primary settling in the first to pull out the, to get the sediment to settle,
Right.
similar to what we do in a septic tank with freezes rise and the solids fall. So that you're getting a better, in my case, effluent, in this case, stormwater to the second structure. What it doesn't pull out would be all the other, constituents, in viruses, bacteria, chemicals, et cetera, that will move with the water, solubles, et cetera.
VOCs.
I guess the point of my question was, how expensive would it be impossible to change that, the piping underneath?
So the conversation then was $50,000 to excavate all of this.
Okay.
And then it would drain from here, and instead of going into this, it would be another pipe that would have to go out to the street to the.
We do a manhole cover.
Sorry, the street.
You do a manhole cover here. It would,
It would go from here
Just shut down instead of.
out to the sewer in the city street, shutting down the entrance, having to redo the entrance, and we would remove this pipe and look to remove that structure. And just take it from there on out.
Do you
So in essence, the groundwater, you still have the potential for water to fall here and get next to the pipe and go along the outside and go in the soil, no matter what.
Do you agree that some setbacks are necessary in all these
I
circumstances?
think
Based on risk stratification.
I think setbacks make sense.
Sure.
I think the reductions in setbacks can be applied. And the fact that a lot of, what I look at when I see this is that, it's 25 seems like a potential number that just based on table C with what we have here is what really we feel is appropriate for this, which is why we proposed this as an option compared to the 75.
No.
75 is what.
75 is what is stated for that, and our, the thought that something could get on the outside run
And then it's
down
a footnote too.
could exist. I'd be curious hearing that it has happened somewhere else, you said, where it got on the outside and it was a small parking lot. I would be curious as to the size of that, because that was one of the things I always thought with this site, is this is a very small parking lot. We're looking at 0.15 acres maybe of drainage area coming at it. a decent amount, half of which is about grass. And so, but just like anything, there's always a chance of something happening.
One thing I'd like to add about the 25-foot setback, it's my understanding, and maybe you can help me clarify this, the 25-foot setback to the sanitary main, isn't it a similar issue where if that sanitary main leaks and we start getting that sewage to get into the groundwater, it could travel up to the 25 feet, which is where we get that 25-foot setback from a sanitary main.
Right, I think we're talking apples and oranges here, though, to be perfectly honest with you, because we're talking about one that is intended to receive all the water and move that water away. That's how it's intended to function. And then, yes, I'm not disputing with you that you could have a 25-foot setback to a sewer line that gets a crack or gets broken or something, and then that there is a leak there. So I think there are two different scenarios, and that one functions an entirely different way, and the other, yes, there could be a problem. And again, I mean, I understand your question. I'm just going back to the layers of protection. We construct the wells properly, then we provide setback distances, and with those layers of protection, we're accomplishing what we intended to do.
It's my understanding that the permit was applied by the geothermal company. Is there a representative from the geothermal company here? Okay. Did they design these drawings? Who did the drawings?
Well, me and Ben.
Okay, together. Before the permit was applied for.
Right. So, like I said, because it's a public bidding process, the contractor wasn't on board until after the bids were accepted.
Right, understood. If at this moment in time, we don't have a permit issued. Correct. Not even a conditional one. Who authorized then, without a permit being approved, who authorized the purchase of the equipment and the delivery of the equipment? Is that the library that did that, or? I understand you want to get the project rolling and.
I think you were saying that the geothermal company looks for the permit, but it's the HVAC company that orders the equipment. And the HVAC company was kind of going about their business of getting the things that they needed to do in order to do their job, because they're two different companies that are working on a coordinated effort, but from two sides.
And what's the total cost of this project?
About $5.4 million.
Okay. Have you had conversation with the geothermal company that is accepted the responsibility for applying for the permit? Didn't prevent the HVAC contractor from going ahead and acquiring the equipment before the permit was approved. Have you had a conversation with them about doing a cost share to correct this?
I have not directly, so that's why I have a team for construction. I have not directly had a conversation with them.
From my point of view, the solution to this is connected to the storm sewer system. Getting rid of that dry well in this portion of the parking lot. Go ahead with your geothermal system and come up with a method of paying for that storm sewer connection. And with the scale of this project, and being that the geothermal company is responsible for the permit, and they overlooked it, come on, they can get the corrective action to get it done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any of the committee have any other questions?
I think we just need a finding of fact.
I'd like to make it.
Well, just, I don't want to speak for everybody, I think we're kind of on the same page. Let me just state my, is it okay if I state what I
Yes.
believe to be the case? I believe to be the case that the ordinance, the state law, and all the governing regulations about setbacks that we've agreed upon are there to protect the aquifer and the people who are drawing water from it, in both the coming and the going in a multitude of different ways. I don't believe there's any hydrologists or geological engineers or anyone else in the room who would speak over those people that have put all of that to paper and had recent opportunity to review and revise those setback recommendations. In this case, we have a pretty cut and dry measurement of feet between two penetrations in the earth and a potential source for contamination. It appears to me that the setback necessary in this case is 75 feet. The permit was applied for and it was denied appropriately based on the number of feet between those things. I believe there is an opportunity there for a corrective action that would mitigate these circumstances, though it's no business of mine. But in the end, what I have noticed from this, and I'll be looking at the rest of the committee to say whether they agree or not, is that Director Noem has appropriately followed all of our expectations for her review of your permit. She has applied the law appropriately in that case. She has provided you every opportunity to review and have an understanding of why that is. My opinion was it was done correctly. So that would be, if the rest of the committee agrees, I would recommend to the full Board of Health that that is our finding of fact, that it was done appropriately and no variance is necessary. Now, what say you?
I would agree.
I agree too, and I'm just such a huge fan of closed loop systems.
Love it too. I want one in my own house.
Right. I just wish that I had $50,000 to give you.
Right.
But I don't. I have like 3. I'm waiting for my next social security check. I got a 1% increase.
Dr. McGuire?
I appreciate the sentiment.
I would absolutely agree, deferring to the application of what you know to be true and safe for the community.
Finding the fact is in favor of
Director Noem?
and Director Noem, yeah, I was just saying for the decision that was a, yes. The finding of fact, according to the committee, is denied and approved as per Director Noem's recommendation.
Yeah.
We need to take a vote.
To recommend
to the Board of Health.
So
Okay.
Because it doesn't stop.
I'll make a motion that this committee recommends to the Board of Health that the variance is, the appeal is denied, and the finding of fact is that staff acted appropriately in applying the law.
Do you have a second?
A second.
Thank you.
Hold on, I gotta step in. Who was the second?
I was.
Thank you. Mr. Markison?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Morowski?
Yes.
Ms. Gaffney?
Yes. Motion passed. Do we have any other business for this evening?
We do not.
Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 5:44 p.m.
Thank you for your time.
What did you say? Okay, I thought that's what you said, I was gonna agree, but I didn't want to say it if that's not what you said. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to.
Mine was that way yesterday.
Well, and I mean, it's on our too.
I appreciate that.
I
I can tell you how many hours I did. And how much more I know about